All right, it's Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. You know what that means. It's another episode of Talking Nerdy. I'm Scott. This is Joe. Thank you all for hanging out with us here on YouTube for our year-end show with a special guest. So tonight we're going to, do things a little differently. We've got a guest tonight. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But first up, Joe, I wanted to say Merry Christmas to you. We haven't really spoken much in the last few days because of the holiday craziness. How was your Christmas?
It's been busy, but it's been fun, man. We had a good time. The kids came over with the grandkids and chilled out. They actually bought me some toys. It was kind of weird, but great in a weird sort of way, opening toys from the kids. So that was fun.
Kind of a full circle moment.
Yeah, went full circle, man. Definitely a fun time. Great seeing them as always. They had a blast. We had fun. A lot of food. So, yeah, it was good. And I'm glad it's over with, to be honest. Let's move on and get 23 started. How about you, Scott? Merry Christmas.
It was quiet. Look, we just did went over to the fam, went over to my brother's and had, look, my niece is 4. So, look, we're doing presents in the morning and then dinner. And, other than that, it was a lot of football this weekend and a lot of movies. Got caught up on a lot because I've been off for a few days from work. But I do want to mention before we get too far into the show, thank you for watching. If you're a first-time watcher of the show, make sure you're hitting subscribe and the notification button so you know when we're live. And if you're going back watching old shows, I hope you like what you're seeing. Make sure you interact with us on our Facebook and our Instagram pages. They're linked on our page below. Let us know what you want to talk about. We're always looking for ideas. So, Joe, you got to tell me, what was the best thing you got for Christmas this year?
Time off from work.
Ooh, a good one.
I get that whole week of shutdown from work every year in July and December. And I just needed it. I need to decompress, watch some movies, hang out, and just chill out. Yeah. Yeah,
EC just dimed you out. He said it was the holiday Barbie.
That's number 2.
And I think that was probably it.
That's number 2.
Look, yeah, I wish I could take the whole week off. Look, I'm in HR, so this is like year end for us. Mm-hmm. So it's hard for me to take the whole week because we're doing like year end evals and raises for next year. So I go in for a couple of days just to tie up some loose ends. But I was off today. I'll be off on Friday. Then I don't go back again until next Tuesday. So, but I think, look, same thing for me. I mean, we got a really nice calendar, like a digital calendar for the house, which in my line of work, number one, most important thing is to really know where I am in every moment of the day, for my loved ones that need to keep track of me. Very cool gift. Something that I've really wanted for the house. I just put it up today. I'll send you pictures. It looks really cool. But yeah, overall, quiet holiday this year. Really didn't do a ton, didn't spend a lot. Thank God. I'm saving it all for next year.
Cheap bastard.
Yep. You're not wrong. I learned from watching you because you squeak when you
learn something from all this.
Not wrong.
I think it's time to bring our guest in. What do you think?
I think that I was just going to transition into that. So,
okay.
What?
You think it's a good idea? I
think it's a great idea. And you have so few of them. I want to celebrate it when it happens.
I'm so giddy because I have a good idea.
So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, want to welcome to the show a fellow podcaster, voiceover artist, someone you have seen recently on WWE programming. So let's all welcome to the show, Flynn Hendrix, everybody. Flynn, welcome to Talking Nerdy.
How you doing, man?
Thank you for having me. I'm good, and it's all downhill from here.
Well, look, we already outed Joe with the holiday Barbie thing, so
it is what it is.
That's the low-hanging fruit.
Hey, at least he can admit he got it, so kudos on that.
I didn't really, but in the sake of argument, hey, let's go with it, whatever.
Exactly. It makes a good story.
If I did hack it up and she'd be next to my Terrifier Art the Clown doll all hacked up, so hey, you never know.
That is pretty good. Idea. You could have hung her upside down and he could have had the hacksaw. For those of you that haven't seen Terrifier 1, that's not a spoiler.
Yeah.
But make sure you go watch it. And so, Flynn, just so you know, we are we talk a lot about horror movies and wrestling and all kinds of stuff. It's a very stream of consciousness pod. But look, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy holiday schedule and the other things you have going on to spend a little bit of time with two newer podcasters and, just kind of shooting the shit for the next hour about what's going on in your world.
Oh, of course. Like I said, I'm just grateful to be here. So thank you guys for having me, and thanks for thinking of me for the year-end episode.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Happy to. So
you're a really busy guy. So what do you got going on? You do voiceovers. You show up on wrestling here, on WWE here and there. You got a lot going on. Where do we start?
Yeah, that's a good question. I really don't know where to start because there's also traveling improv actor in there, husband, father. Before we started, it sounded like a tornado of kids was going through my house as my boys were fighting over their Christmas toys. So, I mean, you throw a dart and we'll see where it sticks for where to start.
Yeah, there you go. So I guess since me and Scott are big wrestling fanatics, we'll start there if you don't mind. And
absolutely.
How did you get into wrestling? How did you get into it? And eventually, how did you end up on Raw? That was great to see.
Man, thank you for that. So this is a bit of a fun story because if you go back and like look at home videos, wrestling has been all around me growing up. Like back on Thanksgiving when they would do the Survivor Series pay-per-view on Thanksgiving night, I go back and look at home videos, and that's what's on in the background. My grandmother and grandfather went bowling and dancing with a promoter around this area named Nick Goulis. Like it's always been around me, but I didn't get into it until about 7th grade. And I even went to WCW's Bash at the Beach 2000, where that whole Jeff Jarrett, Hulk Hogan storyline happened, where Jeff Jarrett laid down in the ring and that whole fiasco happened. But I was so tuned out at that point. I just remember two drunk guys fighting in the bleachers behind me. Like I still have the ticket stub, but I was unaware of this major moment that was happening. But I get pulled in 2002 when all my friends are getting ready to watch the Royal Rumble. Then here comes The Rock versus Hulk Hogan, and I watched that WrestleMania. Then 2 months later, here comes a pay-per-view to Nashville, and Undertaker beats Hulk Hogan for the championship, and I'm addicted. Like, I need my fix every Monday, every Thursday at the time. Like, I had to see wrestling. I had to have wrestling. I had to go to every show that was going on, and it kept growing and growing. Probably unhealthily. I don't even know if that's the right word, and I'm an English major, but it was an unhealthy obsession. And my sophomore year of high school, my mom and a friend of mine go down to Memphis for a SmackDown taping before WrestleMania 21. And some of my in-laws down there are not in-laws, relatives, sorry, were connected to a wrestler named Coco Beware, who is a Memphis legend. Now he's a WWE Hall of Famer, and want to send prayers out to him because he's been hospitalized the last couple of weeks. But I met him, and he was a guy that was about my height, but he's this legendary wrestler, and he made this trailblazing career. And I'm like, okay, maybe there's a possibility, for me to get into this. And as I'm thinking it, he said, if you ever want to get into the business, I'll train you once you get out of college, which the fact that he said after college is a major thing because most people won't even say that now. It's crazy to say, but most people don't even tell you to get an education. They just want to take your money and get you right in. So we exchanged numbers, stayed connected, and, WrestleMania 21 comes around. I see Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle, still the best match of all time, in my opinion. And I'm completely addicted at that point. I'm going to be a wrestler. I don't know what it was. Didn't know what it was at the time, but that's what drew me in. I started saving money for wrestling school, all this stuff. Like, it was all about wrestling. Started going to the gym more, started doing all this stuff to just try and get in shape. And lo and behold, as I come to my senior year of high school and I'm getting ready to graduate, I find out there's a kid a year younger than me at my school that's already wrestling for a local promotion in Nashville, which is run by another guy that was in Memphis. His name was Tony Falk. And if you go back and look, this guy was somebody that ran the roads with Randy Savage. He was the referee of Stone Cold Steve Austin's first match. He had The Rock's first match, Kurt Angle's first match. So again, it's a guy that has done all this stuff, and he had a training school 15 minutes from my house. And lo and behold, the guy that was running the school was the same guy that helped guys like Randy Orton, Dave Bautista, Brock Lesnar, all these guys in Ohio Valley Wrestling back in the early 2000s. And I reached out to him. I reached out to Coco, and Coco said, yeah, as long as you stay in school and you do this, you've got my blessing to go ahead and do it. I know who Tony is. He's a credible guy. He'll take care of you. Well, Tony and that guy who happened to be Chris Michaels had a falling out, which foreshadowing of my career with Tony at one point. And, you know, Tony and his son ended up training me, which led to opportunities to train with guys like Kid Cash, Tracy Smothers, and a host of other legendary people. So, you know, 2007, 6 months after I graduated high school, I had my first match at 140 pounds. I was a scared kid, had no idea what I was getting myself into. And lo and behold, I get a concussion my first match because the ring that we were in was a boxing ring that was nothing but plywood and carpet. And it's just like, oh man, my whole family's here seeing this. And they're like, is this the decision I really just made? Like going to college and then coming home to do this on the weekends. But, you know, they questioned it, but I was just hooked, man. The more I could get, the better. And it's become something that I've tried to walk away from a couple times, but I can't get away from it, man. And it's opened the doors to so many cool things. Like you mentioned most recently, you know, being on Raw with JBL and Baron Corbin. But, you know, earlier this year, actually, I was part of SummerSlam in Nashville, where I was an on-screen security guard with Seth Rollins and Matt Riddle. And if you back it up even further than that, the SmackDown 2 weeks after WrestleMania 30, I was actually on that in a backstage segment, but you got to freeze frame it where there's a segment with 3-man band at the time and Hornswoggle boxing in the back, and you can see me watching it. But I thought that was going to be my only time ever going up there. But, you know, lo and behold, here we are now, and I'm trying as much as I can to stay on their radar and suffering through insane road trips that probably shouldn't happen to try and make it happen. But, you know, it's been a 15-year thing at this point, and I'm still loving every minute of it.
That's awesome. Yeah. So that's a great story. I mean, like I said, me and Scott have been watching wrestling for years. So we heard a lot of crazy stories over the years.
Oh, yeah.
And, have you ever had any crazy traveling stories?
Man, I can give you a few crazy traveling stories. I've got two that come to mind, and I can even give you one about, you know, like fighting with fans. Because, you know, like I've had fans get so into it that they have put hands on me. I've had to put hands on them to defend myself. And I've also had fans so mad at me that they have made threats, you know, against the building where the show was going on, and the police had to be called. So take your pick on where you want to start.
Give us your best one. I'll listen to them all. I can go on forever, but I love these kind of stories.
Okay. So I won't go with the San Antonio story right out of the bat, but basically I'll just go ahead and sum it down. We got booked. Me and another guy got booked by the guy that was the head of Shawn Michaels training school, and for a show in San Antonio. So we make a 13-hour drive down there. Gives us the reservation for a hotel. Turns out the reservation's fake. So we end up staying at a hotel that his cousin owns in the slums of San Antonio. We're the only people in this dilapidated hotel where the hot water doesn't work. We go to the building later that night. 7 people show up. There's no air conditioning in the middle of the summer in Texas. And then we don't get paid. Like, he skips out on paying us. And my automatic thought was, I'm going to try and steal the chihuahua of this person that's selling the tickets and just head for the border and run back to Tennessee as fast as I can. But that's I always say that was my worst wrestling trip, but it still gives me a funny story to tell. But most recently, we were talking a little bit before we started rolling the camera here. I was at the SmackDown in Indianapolis, Indiana, and it seemed like everything that could happen to me, and it happened to be the other guy that was in the segment with me and JBL, the guy that was serving the drinks. We were going to that SmackDown, and, you know, call time is 2 p.m. their time, 1 p.m. Central, and we leave at 8 a.m. Central time. It's supposed to be a 4.5-hour drive, so we should get up there by about 1:30. Give us 30 minutes to spare. As soon as we get out there, we come to the state line in Kentucky. Interstate's shut down for flooding. We sit there for about an hour while they drain this water off the interstate. Get going again till we get up to Louisville. Shut down for 7 miles. like just everything that was against us on that trip turned a 4.5 hour trip into a 7 hour trip. But thankfully, like WWE was very understanding of that and didn't tell us, hey, just fuck off and turn around, so they were very understanding of it. And obviously it worked out in our favor that following Monday, which was a much smoother road trip because it put us on TV. But it's just the things you do to chase this dream where other people would have just said, I'm done, I give up, but it was, again, it's a funny story to tell. And in my younger days, it probably would have led to a panic attack, but now it's just a fun experience to share.
I think from the stories I've heard, that's called paying your dues. So I think you paid your dues a little bit.
Oh, right, yeah. There. I mean, in all honesty, you really never stop paying your dues, because if you get right down to it, I'm 15 years in and I'm still paying dues. Like if they need help with something, I'm going to help. If if they need help setting up chairs or taking down chairs, whatever it's going to be, even if I'm traveling to that show, I'm going to help, or I'm going to help a younger talent, which is weird for me to say because I'm only 33 at this point. But, you're still paying your dues every day in some way, shape, or form. So that's something that never ends.
That's a good way to look at it too. And I know a lot of the guys in the locker room appreciate an attitude like that for sure. Mm-hmm. And that's probably why you've been invited back multiple times.
Absolutely. And I think for me too, for the longest time, it was I didn't want to say no to anything. So there were shows even where I'd work 4 times on the same show because other people didn't show up or whatever it may be. But I just wanted to be reliable. I wanted to be consistent, and I wanted to have that Ric Flair quality about me where I would give you the best no matter what situation I was in, even if I was working 3 or 4 times a night. Like I wanted to be the guy that you based your promotion around so that I could work these big names that you would bring in. It didn't always work in my favor, but it's still the mentality that I have even today. Like I want to be that guy and I want to help these other people, but selfishly, I also want to be your top guy because it's still more pay to an extent, even on the independents. It gives me a chance to still get better, and it gives me a chance to network and work with these guys who've been where I want to be. And it's a win-win as far as I look at it.
Yeah. So primarily, what independent circuits do you work for? Do you work in the Nashville area and primarily now, or?
Nashville, it's sad to say, has become sort of a dead market because at one point there were about 5 or 6 different promotions working at the same time, and I worked for each of them, but there was always a rivalry between the promotions where if you worked for one, you couldn't work for the other. They would be on the men for 2 weeks and they hated each other again. And it killed the market. So I've gotten very selective now, especially after, taking a break for acting and coming back. The only places I'm really working right now are around Nashville in the Kentucky area and kind of East Tennessee area. And then also I've made some trips up to Wisconsin a couple times in the last few months for a promotion called Legacy Pro, but the main place I'm working for right now is Ultimate Championship Wrestling, and I'm currently, I think, their longest reigning Southern States champion, if I'm not mistaken. But nice. Those are kind of the main ones I'm putting my stake in.
Okay, nice.
So you mentioned before the amount of heat that you get at shows, and look, I'm a huge Jim Cornette person. I'm a Cornette guy, and look, he's on record as saying you haven't really known that you've made it as a heel unless somebody's trying to kill you on your way back to the dressing room.
Yep.
So what is your best story? Because you referenced a few, but I want to get a little detail here. What was your best story about that ultimate heat moment at a show where you were really thinking you were going to need a police escort?
Absolutely. And I'll say this too, because in both situations that we kind of talked about off air, the police did get involved. But Jim Cornette says a lot of things, some outlandish, some very, very wise if you sit through the outlandish stuff to get to it.
Of course.
And the biggest thing for me especially is I look at it as method acting, because today people have seen behind the curtain. They know a lot of the ins and outs, whether they should or they shouldn't. And my goal is to make them suspend that disbelief. I don't want to come out there and be the guy that, they're still trying to high five on the way out after the show's over, or get to sign an autograph for their kids, which, if they come to a con, I'll do that. But I want to be that guy that makes them want to cheer for their hero. I want to be that Roddy Piper, or I guess nowadays you could equate it to an MJF, where there's no redeeming qualities whatsoever. So I've been doing that as far back as 2010, and in a way, it's like a Napoleon complex, because I'm 5'6", 5'8" in my boots, depending, but I'm not the biggest guy on the roster by any means. But I'm gonna present myself in that way, like I'm the biggest, baddest MFer in the locker room, especially when I'm out there in front of the crowd, because it is what it is. That's what you paid to see. So there was a show in Columbia, Tennessee back in 2010. I had just lost the Southern Heavyweight Championship the show before, and this was my rematch, which was also going to be my last time at that promotion. So the promotion was going to do this big brawl at the end, where the good guys and the bad guys are all fighting in the ring to end the show, and the bad guys, basically get run out to the locker room. So as I'm getting thrown out of the ring, this big guy, probably like 3 times my size, stomach hanging out of his shirt, like stereotypical Southern guy that you would see, like at a tractor pull or something like that, starts giving me all this lip, blah, blah, blah. And there's nothing between us but a thin rope for a security barrier. So he's just talking. I just turn around and, raise my fist like that. He flinches and falls back into his seat. So people start laughing at him. I look, I turn around, and as I turn around, this guy got up quick, and he grabbed me by the forehead and punched me in the back of the head. And as I turned around, I saw another wrestler who was actually smaller than me, named Tim Ernesto, getting on him, and he was just waylaying on the guy. This guy pushes him off. Security's trying to stop him, and he's just pushing them aside because he's so much bigger. And I go on autopilot. I grab the guy by the ears and just punt him right in his nose. Like the tip of my boot catches him right in the bridge of the nose and shatters his nose. And I kid you not, they had to get security and police to escort me down to the locker room and told me to stay there until they got him out. And by the time I was leaving the building and going to my car, like 50 different people had reached out to me saying, "What happened? What did you do? Did you get in a fight with a fan, or what really happened?" Like, it was an absolutely insane experience. But at the same time, too, had I come back and that not been my last show, that would have made for some killer business after the fact, because it was a real heel. Like the longtime veteran heels there didn't get that kind of heat. Like, it was legitimate. People hated me. People hated the real person, and they wanted to see me get hurt. And that led to that incident, which made it believable for a few minutes. And that was my goal, without, the altercation being anywhere in my mind, but that's the end result that we got.
Well, when you describe that guy in my head, all I can see is Bear Hugger from Super Punch-Out.
There you go.
That's literally all I can see in my.
That's pretty close. Take away a few teeth. Take away a few teeth, and you might be dead on.
I pictured a bunch of guys down at the bingo hall near me, but anyway.
That's also accurate. But yeah, like in some of these southern places, I hate to use the cliche, but it's still real to them.
Mm-hmm. No,
it's still real.
That's cool, because really you don't have any true heels anymore, except, Piper was always a true heel. I don't care if he was trying to be good. It didn't work. He was always a bad guy in my eyes.
Absolutely.
He did it the right way. Dr. D, David Schultz.
Oh, yeah.
And then, like you said, most recently, the best heel in the game right now, MJF.
Yep.
That guy doesn't break character for shit.
Yeah, nope. He yells at kids at autograph sessions. That's what you do. You don't go, and I know the curtain is pulled back to a certain point for everybody. Mm-hmm. We all know the deal, or we think we do at least. But to have that heat wherever you go, whether it be at a show or autograph signing or at the mall, that's how it's supposed to be. At the same time, people should have enough sense to know you can't go around hitting these guys because they are heels. This is a show.
Absolutely.
And they have to perform this way. So, unfortunately, you ran into that situation, and I would hope that you were protected by anything legality wise by that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because and the same thing even happened earlier this year, which I can't believe it's already been, like since February at this point. But, I had a guy in a town called Salina, which is about an hour and a half, like to the east of here. And this guy got so mad at me that, he was telling the police I spit on him, that I tried to assault him. And all I did was get in his face and insult him. And it's like he wanted the cops to arrest me for assault for saying that I spit on him, which I didn't do. That's disgusting. COVID's a thing now. That's not going to happen. But, it's like this guy got so mad that he threatened to go start a fire in the concession stand, and the police had to escort him out of the building. Like, the whole thing was just absolutely insane. And I was so oblivious to how bad things were getting because I was having the match in the ring that I don't encourage this by any means, but my finish to the match and actually how I won the Southern States title was an old school veteran in the back gave me the idea for the finish. Hey, why don't you give him a low blow, and while the ref is distracted, put a bag over his head to choke him out. Of course, pulling behind the curtain, the bag was completely safe and worked in a way that he was not going to suffocate. But the people in the crowd did not know that, and they didn't even care or see that because they were so focused on this guy who was still trying to get to me, and I'm just so oblivious to it that they had to send somebody out to start fighting me to get me to the back safely. And I'm like, what's going on? They're like, did you not see any of that? They had to send me out here to get you back safely. I'm like, shit. Yeah. Okay. I guess job well done. I don't know, but it's
you gotta wonder.
He's doing it right.
I was gonna say, you gotta wonder what goes through a guy's head where he's so mad that his only solution is to set fire to the concession stand.
Yeah.
Either that or somebody burned his popcorn. I can't think of which one it is.
So, but you remember we went to Extreme Rules. Remember the guy that was really pissed off behind us? I mean, he was going off. Do you remember that older man standing up?
Oh God. During the Bianca Belair match.
I don't know if he was a little bit special or what, but something was going on there. I don't know what the hell was going on.
He was as angry could be.
Somebody pissed in his beer or something. I don't know.
Somebody took away his cotton candy. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, something sparked that dude up. I don't know what it was, but
and Flynn, so just to kind of give you a little bit of context, Joe and I are in the backyard of ECW, old school.
Okay,
we're in the Delaware, Maryland area. So, look, those days of like guys where literally you fear for your life coming through the crowd, like I've been to those shows. So like I literally I know what you're talking about, where it's like literally, they're heckling fans in the parking lot before the show starts.
Yeah.
That's how serious they took this.
Yeah.
But like to hear that from your perspective as a guy who's in the ring and literally just trying to go through with your match to get to the end, and this guy's trying to literally, blow up the concession stand. That's still, I don't know where the human mind goes at that point.
And imagine, when we go to a wrestling event, me and Scott, it's either Baltimore or Philly, two of probably the worst places you want to get in any of that shit.
Especially where the arena is in Baltimore.
Reputations, especially Philly, for the fans being, over the top or whatever. So we can relate. I know I've seen some things in my day, fights in the audience. Thankfully, none of them were after me. Like they were you, but that's real heat, man. That's what it's all about, though.
It's insane because I came to find out after the fact that this wasn't even just a fan. This was a guy that wanted to train to actually get into wrestling that was working on the ring crew, but nobody bothered to, him in on the rules, or I hate to say smarten him up, but smarten him up. Like he didn't understand that it's a show. Like he was giving me grief, so I was giving it back because one person does it, everybody around him is going to give in and everybody's going to start booing me. And it was just, like the fire spreads at that point. But at that point, I guess it spread a little too far.
Can you imagine wrestling him years down the line? Remember me, motherfucker?
I'd rather not. I'd rather be retired by that point.
We might have been dealing with a Bruiser Brody situation at that point.
Yeah.
There was a point that I did start carrying like an axe handle to the ring for that same reason because, he would carry a chain to protect himself. And at that point, like I had mine just as not only as a prop for the matches, but also as a self-defense thing, because 2 or 3 people come at me, I'm going to do my best with 2 fists. But if I got that, it's at least something to even the playing field a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
So growing up, so kind of you're in the Tennessee area, you're wrestling in what was really one of the wrestling hotbeds in the 70s and 80s, Memphis.
Yep.
Have you had a chance to go back and watch like the Vice series, the Tales of the Territories that's been out?
I've seen the first episode because they put it on YouTube. I have to wait for Hulu to upload all that because I don't have DirecTV anymore. But I've seen the first one. I've heard the stories about like Jerry Jarrett and the guy coming to stab him in the ring. I've heard the ones about like Randy Savage and the police dog at Waffle House and all this crazy stuff. Man, like it's insane because it's literally a mafia territory. And then of course, being in the locker room and working with guys like Bill Dundee or Ricky Morton, you hear those stories again and you find out that they're like, shit, that's real. Like you'd think they were exaggerated, but that's real. Like it's insane because back in the day, it was a point of pride if somebody tried to stab you, if somebody slashed your tires on your car, like any of this stuff that would be a major inconvenience today, that was a point of pride for them.
Right. Yeah. And that was kind of where I was getting with the Cornette Heat thing earlier. So, what was one of those stories then with those guys that in that Memphis area that, those Bill Dundee, the Ricky Morton guys that were in that Mid-South area, what was the craziest story that you heard that, you were like, holy shit, like literally the eyes wide open?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember if it was the Mid-South area or if it was the Georgia area, but there was a time when Ole Anderson, one of the founding members of the Four Horsemen faction, he got stabbed after a match, and he had to have somebody just like keep the pressure on him to keep him alive until he got to the hospital. Like he didn't realize it was that bad until he got to the locker room, but he had to literally have a woman keep pressure on him to keep him from bleeding out. Like it was that intense. And I think he ended up marrying that woman, but just something like that, or, hearing about guys get stabbed in the calf and the blade is in so deep that they can't just pull it out. Stuff like that, man. Or there's even one that Jim Cornette talks about. Like, I think he's even got this letter framed. Somebody sent him a death threat that said, watch where you stand in the ring because once you see that red light, it's going to be too late. Like somebody threatened to put a sniper rifle on him, and it's just like, Jesus Christ, man. Like, I want to get heat, but I also want to live and go home to my family too.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
That was nuclear style. One of the things, and what brought me up to that too was, look, the story of the Freebirds and the Von Erichs. We're talking about heat. Think about when Michael turned on Kerry in the cage match against Flair and smacked his head against that cage door. Like literally the death threats, like they couldn't even drive in Dallas. Like literally, if any of them drove in Dallas, they were getting pulled over and roughed up by the cops. And I know I brought this show up before, the Tales from the Territories, but for those of you that have not seen it, it's on Vice. Go back and watch it. They did Dark Side of the Ring. That's got 2 seasons out. 3rd season coming next year. The Tales from the Territories just got 4 or 5 people from some of the biggest territories, AWA, World Class, Mid-South, the old NWA, which is where I started with wrestling.
I love all that shit, all of it.
And they sat around and they told those stories like you were talking about. Like one whole episode was dedicated to, Lawler and Kaufman, which is literally one of the best wrestling angles of all time. I think we can all agree on that.
It's what made it. It's what literally brought it to the term sports entertainment. It was, and it's crazy to think that Vince McMahon's father did not want to do that. Like it's so insane to think that he passed up that opportunity. But it's so awesome to see where it actually played out, going with somebody like Jerry Lawler.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day. Sorry, Scott. Back in the day when you had someone turn on someone, I could remember a few different heel turns that just stick out in my mind. The ones you've talked about, and then Hogan turning with the NWO. I mean, they were throwing all kinds of shit in the ring. Nobody ever thought they never thought they'd see Hogan as a never in a million years would you see Hogan.
Right.
I couldn't believe it myself. I mean, then you remember the this was an actual turn, but the snooker with the coconut against Piper, that was cool. Then you
Andre ripping the cross off Hogan's shirt.
Yeah, you never thought you'd see Andre as a bad guy. Nobody ever thought they'd see Andre as a bad guy. Not here in the United States. I know he did that in Japan, but not here in the United States. We didn't think we'd see that. And then another one was the Rockers when Shawn Michaels, threw Marty Jannetty.
Marty through the door, through the window.
Yeah.
I will say, just because I'm not a fan of Marty Jannetty by any stretch, that's probably my favorite one. So
I think that one, I didn't know what to think at the time because I did like the Midnight Rockers, the Rockers, whatever you want to call them.
Right.
But I think someone knew what was the big part of that team, so to speak, and that was Shawn Michaels. So they did it right. Marty Jannetty really never made anything after that. He never really did.
He was his own worst enemy.
Yeah.
Well, and then, except make everybody feel creepy on YouTube videos.
Yep. Yeah. And he also no-showed an event where I was actually supposed to have a match with him and blocked me on social media for calling him out about it. But, probably for the better.
It wasn't one of those cases like when you break up the Rockers and you don't have the Hardys together. The Hardys are – I don't think they're any good without each other, in my opinion.
I agree.
I think they're better together, and the Rockers were good, but as we found out at the time, they were much better apart. Well, at least one side of that was.
So, and I'll say, going back to the Hardys, for example, for the longest time, I always pulled for Matt because, he was the more technical, more grounded. I could relate to that, and I feel like there was a point where he could have been the one that made that transition to a full-on singles champion. He had the ECW run, but I felt like that was a little too late. But there are certain times like Hawk and Animal, for example, they could have broken them up, and Hawk could have been your number one guy. But it's just it really just depends on the situation and the creative behind it. Because if they don't have the right creative to push those guys, the fans aren't going to care.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you're
not a lot of creative right now. It's really right now.
Yeah, we keep hoping for creative to show up, but it hasn't yet.
So many good ideas. If they just fucking listen to me, they could have 2 million a week, man. They could have it, man. Anyway, go ahead, Scott. Sorry.
I'm sure there are a lot of people that feel the same way, Joe.
I know, but come on, just listen. So,
I guess with the fact that you've kind of been around the locker room in both regimes in WWE, the McMahon era and now the Triple H era. So, can you kind of feel a difference in the atmosphere in the locker room and
Good question. I like that one.
Yeah. And this was actually something because again, the guy that was in the JBL segment with me, his name is professionally it's Zach Hartnell. He's my tag partner and on again, off again enemy, depending on what show we're on. But he'd been there a lot more after me, especially during the Vince era and a little bit earlier this year too. So I was always asking him like, what's it like? What's it like? But then I'm the first one to go back after the change. Like SummerSlam was literally right after Vince McMahon left. Yep. It was so laid back. Like it was ridiculous because I've never forgotten the feeling going back to 2014, being at Raw and then being at SmackDown the next day. And, you're told, don't talk to anybody if they pass you in the hallway. Don't do this. Don't do that. Like everybody is walking on eggshells. Like I was afraid to even talk to people that I knew from the indies that I'd worked shows with because it was just like everybody's walking on eggshells. And then, of course, there are idiots in the group that were extras that were going around accusing people of stealing their pills or going through their bag or breaking every rule imaginable. And I'm just sitting there like, okay, this is what's going on. But, it's like you bump into Stephanie McMahon in the hallway and she acknowledges you. Are you not supposed to say, like, how are you and thank you for having me here? Because that's what I did. She was very nice at that point. It was cool. But, that's a rule that you're told not to do. And then, of course, you see Vince McMahon as you're coming out of catering with a giant-ass cookie in your hand. He's hanging up the phone and he acknowledges you. And I just try not to be a fat piece of shit and say, thank you for having me here, Mr. McMahon. He goes, oh, thank you for being here, pal. Just that stuff. But, it's like the rules you're told not to do. If they talk to you, are you supposed to stand there like a statue? Like it's completely stupid. And then just another example, Mark Carano was in charge of talent relations at the time. I was told to go to the talent relations room when I showed up. I walk into the room because he told me to, and then he stops me and says, wait, did you knock? It's like, you just told me to come in, but did you knock? Okay, whatever. But at that point, the only cool thing that came out of it was I made a good impression with William Regal. Not good enough to get me back at the time, but just working with a guy named Vordell Walker made a great impression with him because it was very hard hitting, very snug, and very technically sound. But that was the pretty much highlight of that right there. But then when you go back to SummerSlam, people are happy. There's not a lot of stress. Like I'm not even kidding you. There's like pizza boxes up and down the hallway in the production room where the extra talent is, like stuff you wouldn't see when Vince was there. And like it's just everybody hanging out at the ring. Nick Khan, Triple H, Undertaker, all these guys are out there and they're talking to you, they're being cordial. Like it's not a there's obviously rules in place, but it's way more relaxed, way less strict, and you're able to actually like go out in the crowd where we were and like you can watch the show from like one of the concourses of Nissan Stadium. And then like 30 minutes later, you're getting driven out on a golf cart through the crowd to get in position for your thing. And like, you're able to make these moments and have fun. And I stole my security shirt, which I wasn't supposed to do, but who gives a shit at this point? But, it's like, it's way more relaxed. And then of course, referencing Indianapolis a few minutes ago, back in the day, I think they would have just told you to go home. It's like, well, if you left at 8 a.m., why didn't you leave at 6 a.m.? Why didn't you do this? But it's so much more relaxed. It's so much more fun. And the talent is way more outgoing because somebody like Baron Corbin was like, dude, I had fun working with you. Like I was making JBL laugh, and you hear horror stories about that guy supposedly being a bully, but you're walking into the building with him. He's telling you jokes about ribs he pulled back in 1996 with Barry Windham. Like it's a complete 180 from what you would expect. Like the talents are eating with the extra talents. Like everybody's just enjoying themselves. It's a complete 180 from what it was 8 years ago.
Sounds like that's the way it should be. I hope Vince McMahon is not coming back. I don't even pray very much, but I will pray for that.
I'll say
anywhere
this.
Near the place.
I'll say this. Like if it wasn't for him, this business wouldn't be what it is right now.
Yeah.
But
Agreed.
After a certain point, like you look back at Memphis even. There's a reason why, Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett would book in cycles. That one would have 6 months on, the other would have 6 months off, or they would change things up. Like this change is good. The stock is up. Everything is going positively. I mean, it's your company. Like your name is still attached to it. Dude, just sit back, enjoy the fruits of your labor, and spend time with your grandkids. Like just don't work all the time. Still work out. Like I'm friendly with Vince's personal trainer, which is weird to me that we talk on Instagram every now and then, but like, dude, go work out with him. Just enjoy your life now that you're not in the grind 24/7. Like you've worked for this long. You're almost 80 years old at this point. Just enjoy what you've done and be proud of what your daughter and son-in-law and Nick Khan are doing with the business now, because it's literally something to be proud of for what they've done in the last 6 months.
Definitely.
So do you think at this point, I'm sorry, Joe, but do you think at this point, I mean, we haven't seen the results translate in numbers yet. Like,
right.
Joe is the first one to point out that it hasn't really gotten better. I think it has gotten a little better. I think there's, I don't think that there's a better angle than the bloodline right now.
For sure.
I love that they're pushing, Kevin Owens again. They're really starting to put some stock into guys. Now, from your opinion, where do you see this a year from now?
Well, I'm going to base it off what I've seen just from the 3 shows that I've done, which, you go in expecting to see like empty seats in the arena, but the KFC Yum Center in Louisville was completely packed. The stadium in Indianapolis, the arena was completely packed, which was insane to see. And then every seat that was available at Nissan Stadium what was packed out. So I'm taking that as a good sign that it's trending in the right direction, and not necessarily something that's going to happen overnight. But I do think that, obviously they brought so many people back since Vince has stepped down that unfortunately a lot of those guys are going to get lost in the shuffle because there's only so much TV time. There's only so much creative. And, like some of the talents, like you could say a Hit Row or even a Killer Cross, for example, came back big and now they've been pushed down the ladder again. But, it's just, it's not going to be an overnight thing. But I do think, like Impact is doing better now. New Japan has Wrestle Kingdom coming up as we're recording this. AEW, I hope they've gotten through all of their, their backstage drama and everything, because the more those shows do better, the better WWE is going to do, and vice versa. If everybody's doing better, it's going to pop up. But I think the biggest thing, no matter how good it gets, is that social media is going to allow everybody to have an opinion. And whether it's a bot, whether it's somebody that doesn't even watch or just hates wrestling in general, if they can be convincing enough, they're going to say one thing that will get somebody to agree with them and retweet it, whether they watch the show or not. I mean, it may be a valid criticism, but I think a lot of people just tend to gravitate towards the negative as opposed to enjoying what's out there right now and working with the best of what's out there, because everybody wants to know more about the backstage drama, or is Vince coming back, or what's going on with CM Punk. Like, everybody wants to know more about that as opposed to what's actually going on in the ring. And I think that's a lot of what's hurting it today. But I do think that it's going to continue getting better, especially as we get into WrestleMania season, which we're coming up on the Raw 30th anniversary, the Royal Rumbles after that. And, we're steamlining right to WrestleMania, which all the rumors are abound now. Is Cody Rhodes coming back? Like, there's all this stuff to pick it up. And it's just exciting to see, because there's a lot of potential for what could be coming next. Mm-hmm. And that's what's pulled me back in, because during the pandemic, I stopped watching. It was hard to watch without a crowd, and I didn't realize how much of an impact that made. But, I'll say that they're doing well enough to pick their stock back up, and the crowds are more energetic because they're still trying to get away from what COVID was, where you couldn't even get out. So I think it's trending in the right direction, I guess, to sum it up is the best way I can say it.
Yeah, I kind of want AEW. I know Scott's he doesn't like AEW at all. I do watch it. I do watch it, and mostly it's a lot of cringe for me. Like, it's
right.
It's not very good storylines. They're not using the right people. They have these no names on there instead of the people that they took from WWE.
Yeah. It has seasonings of WCW where you get all these ex-WWE guys, but then what do you do with them? What do you do with your originals? And my biggest critique with AEW stems back to their very first show, very first match. And I still don't understand the psychology behind this, because I look at it from a real perspective. But very first match of Cody Rhodes and Sammy Guevara. Cody Rhodes goes to do a dive. Sammy Guevara pulls Cody's wife right in front of him to protect him, and then throws her out of the way. And then they shake hands after the match. Like, I cannot imagine shaking hands with somebody that put my wife in danger. Like, that kind of threw it all out the window for me. But then you see, like, what they're doing with FTR to an extent, or getting CM Punk to come back, MJF, like, all these opportunities, or the Owen Hart thing. Like, that's all great stuff, or taking care of Brody Lee's family now that, he's unfortunately passed away. Like, just things like that are awesome. But then, like, there's a lot of questionable stuff too, but I'm not the one making those decisions. I'm just the guy watching from the sidelines and trying to get them to book me too, but no luck yet.
No. I mean, I think we want them to do good, just for the fact that the better they do, then WWE will step it up. Because let's face it, I'm a WWE guy first. No question asked. But if you don't have any competition, you're just like, I'm just going to sit back and we're going to make money anyway. But if you have that competition, I don't want them to buy AEW. I know that probably wouldn't happen anyway, because Khan has a lot of money too. But I don't even want them to put him out of business, honestly. I want to be able to invest in some storylines on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And even if they have to extend that to 3 hours and make the Friday show a little earlier so people can watch and make it more relevant, I think that'll be a good start. Right now,
absolutely,
it's a lot of nothingness, and very
There's
minimal
no
storyline for me.
zero continuity.
Yeah.
Zero
And
continuity.
the thing is,
there's no reason to tune in the following week from what you
Right.
saw. And like, remember back in the day on Raw, it would end, and you're like, "Shit, it ended." Now I gotta watch next week to see what happens.
Yeah.
The following week, it picks up right where it left off.
Right.
It was
They
that
won't
continuity.
let you forget.
Yeah,
And that's, I think the biggest thing again is it's something that they've used to compare WWE and WCW is one is a wrestling company producing television, the other is a television company producing wrestling.
Mhm.
So
Great
even
point.
if you've got somebody like Tony Khan that is a lifelong fan, there are still restraints, of one person trying to wear all these hats when he should be delegating it. And I'll go ahead and be completely honest. I think it's a personal mistake to have active talents be in such high positions in the company, whereas they should be doing that after they're retired. If they have stake in the company because they started it, cool. But when it comes to booking decisions, it's like, you saw with Dusty Rhodes back in the day. It's hard to be objective when you also have that say so, because if you book yourself in a high profile position, you're going to be under scrutiny.
yeah.
But, even with that, like, we're in a time now where this is something I would have loved as a kid when I first got in. We've got wrestling 5 nights a week now, like Monday through Friday.
Mhm.
There's wrestling. If you can get Impact, like, it's there. But, again, like, the continuity makes it hard to watch sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't watch.
That's always been my complaint.
Yeah, I don't watch NXT anymore. I gave up. I can't do it.
Right. Well,
And then
it's hard
Impact's
because
never been good to me. Yeah, Impact's just never.
right.
done
Well,
it.
it's hard because a lot of the guys that I would watch Impact or NXT for are now back on the main roster. So, like, don't get me wrong, there are great guys down there like Apollo Crews or Braun
Mhm.
Breaker in NXT, but actually even Grayson Waller, I shouldn't leave him out because I'm very entertained by him. But
Mhm.
it's just hard when you fall out of that pattern to get back into it, unless there's going to be something big. Like Shawn Michaels is my number one guy, and he's in charge of all that. But it's still hard for me to find that time when I've got so much other stuff going on outside of that to dedicate to just sitting down and watching that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's another thing that, now that William Regal's coming back after the first of the year, I think we're going to start to see some fundamental changes with staffing and that as some of these contracts run out at AEW and some of these contracts run out with MLW and Impact. You're going to start to see, I think, not an influx, but a sprinkle of fresh talent, like we did in the beginning of the Black and Gold era in NXT. Before you got the full-on Adam Coles and stuff like that, when you had Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn and things like that, those days, I think you're going to start to see that turn again because that was all William Regal going out to these independent shows and look, you could probably speak on this, Flynn, better than anybody, cultivating that local talent that had some exposure on a smaller scale, but didn't have the machine behind it to give them the spotlight. Like, I mean, Cornette loves to talk about Sami Zayn when he had Sami Zayn back in Ring of Honor. Sami Zayn wouldn't talk on the microphone.
Yep.
He did the El Genericio gimmick where he was a mute. Now he's one of the best talkers in professional wrestling.
He is.
I put him top 5.
He's very entertaining.
What's funny is, like, when he would talk, like I think Colt Cabana finally got him to talk on his podcast, he used a very, very bad Spanish accent, which you couldn't get away with now. But, now it's just like when you give these guys a chance to shine, especially in situations that, like, you would never think Sami Zayn would be in a situation that he's in now. Like, you would just imagine he's probably going to be tied to Kevin Owens or, in all honesty, under the Vince regime, he probably would have been an enhancement talent just based off the way he looks. But he's so talented now that you put it up there, like people even say it, like the producers, Shane Helms has even said it. He's the most over talent in wrestling right now across all companies. And he's up there with Roman Reigns, the top commodity in wrestling, the undisputed universal champion. And he's out, like, I don't want to say he's outshining him, but people are talking more about him than they are the champion.
Well, they're chanting Sammy, Sammy, Sammy last week,
Yeah.
and Roman Reigns is standing right next to him.
Well, think about
and
it.
It's good to see because Sammy, when he was wearing the green outfit and he was doing all that kind of shit, I thought his next step was out like getting released with the rest of the a couple of years ago. I really did.
A future endeavor email.
Yeah, but seeing like where he's at now, he's really entertaining. You never know what's going to come out of his mouth when he grabs that mic, and he has those guys laughing their asses off right in the ring.
Exactly. That's what I was about to say. Like, he's so good and he's so spontaneous that like those guys in the ring, you see them trying to cover their face or trying not to laugh.
Yeah,
it's hilarious. I mean,
there's whole YouTube videos dedicated to him making them break during the show.
Yeah.
I mean, let's think about it. Literally, the last WWE show of the year, he is in the main event with Roman Reigns and John Cena. Now, Kevin's there too because he's part of the story. But Sami Zayn, a year ago, we would have never thought this.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I went. That's where I was going a little bit earlier with it. Where do you see us in a year? Because I never would have seen Sammy coming. Joe, we sat at your house and watched the WrestleMania match with Johnny Knoxville.
Yeah.
And it was literally comedic relief. It was a great match. It was well done for what it was. But it wasn't spotlighting Sammy in a way where his talent would really shine.
Right. It's more of I guess it's more of an insider thing because, you know, like to the average fan, I don't say this in a disparaging way, they're going to see it as a novelty match. But to somebody that's trained in the business, when they see somebody like Sammy that can take those guys through that match and, you know, get them through it and just sell the way he did, it's a masterpiece. And that guy deserves like an Emmy for that. And then on top of that, too, when he gets body slammed by Wee Man, of all things, that reaction was up there with the reaction that Stone Cold got the night before. Like, that's something you never thought you would say. It's insane.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And to be where he came from, and look, I give all the credit in the world because that was under the McMahon regime. You know, but look, he has really blossomed since Triple H really jumped in and took the reins and retook creative, because this is a whole different side. I mean,
absolutely.
And it has been the best part.
Nope, I think he froze.
He froze up. Either that or
that's a lovely picture.
Either that or he can't get over my beauty.
Oh man, it's like he's in awe. He's just drooling right now.
Yeah, he's drooling right now. But I think what he was getting at is there's so many people out there in the WWE that were held back for so long, and look at all the things they could have done if given the chance.
For sure. So, and the thing is like for the longest time they wanted this very cookie cutter. You know, like, you've got to be over 6 foot. You've got to have this bodybuilder's physique. You've got to be this physical specimen or somebody that turns heads in the airport, which that's all well and good. But if you don't have the physical talent to back it up, you're doing nothing but hurting the product. And, it also didn't hurt, too, that people could be so fickle. Like, people in charge could be so fickle that they don't like your accent. Or one week they love you, then the next week you're just tossed out the door. Like, they start doing something with you, then you're gone. But like the long-term storytelling that they've invested in this angle specifically, especially when you see the little looks that Roman Reigns has over Sammy's shoulder, or when he leaves the room, like, something is coming. Like, you have to imagine that betrayal is coming. And it's going to be so good because there have been moments right now where you think he's going to do it. And even as somebody trained in the business, I'm like, oh shit, they're going to do it. And the way they sell it on their face, like Sammy thinks it's coming, it's just absolutely magical storytelling. And that's what wrestling really is. It's storytelling with, physicality to an extent.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Oh, so Scott just messaged me. I was listening to you, of course, but that was him saying his power went out. So that was the problem.
Oh, no.
He's going to try to get back on, but if not,
I hope it comes back on for him.
Yeah. Yeah,
I know we had that this weekend. So we had rolling blackouts with all the cold weather. So I hope it comes back.
Yeah, it was oh my God, it was like single digits here. I don't really get cold. I'm a bigger guy, so I'm usually okay with cold, but that was a little ridiculous.
Yeah,
So
we got down to 0 the day before Christmas Eve,
mhm.
and then I think it got down to -2 at the lowest, which is very unusual for this part of the
Yeah,
country. But man, I'm not a fan of the cold at all. Just it
no,
hurts my joints at this point.
yeah, yeah. I couldn't. Yeah, that was too much for me. And it's like even to let the dog out. Like you let the dog out, hurry up, come in. They want to play around the yard. I'm like, no, 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 no.
Yeah,
Let's go back in.
isn't that cold on your feet? Like just go to
Yeah,
your business and let's go. Come on.
my one dog likes to lay down. Like he'll lay down in 100-degree heat, and he'll lay down in the 0-degree weather. It doesn't matter to him one
Man,
bit. Um,
I need his lack of caring. I just need that
yeah,
right there.
yeah. I don't think I'll ever have that. So in the chat, EC is actually my co-host on Well That Effing Figure. That's the other podcast.
Right.
We do. He said it's -10 in Milwaukee where he lives.
Oh man,
So,
okay. I'm glad I'm not up in Milwaukee doing a
no,
show right now. I
no,
feel for you for sure.
he can have that. He can have that for
Golly,
sure.
yeah. My joints hurt for you. That's all I can
Yeah,
say.
exactly. So we didn't. We don't have too. We don't want to hold you too much past an hour. We usually
Yeah,
try
you're
to
good.
keep
You're
this
good.
around an hour, but we didn't touch on half of the things that we wanted to touch on with you because you got so many other layers and so
Oh
many other
man.
things that you're involved in that we may just have to have you on again if you're willing to do that at some point.
Name the time and place.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, we can talk a little bit longer if you want to plug anything or
Man,
put
I
anything
would
out
just
there. And
I would just say, if you want to go to my link tree, it's linktree/the Flynn Hendrix, FLYNNHENDRIX.
okay.
It's got a lot of links to my social media, my YouTube, my website. Here soon, it's going to have links to all of my merch. Like if you want to get shirts, or I'm actually selling some things out of my personal collection, Dragon Ball, Star Wars, all that. I'm selling it to downsize and also
Mhm.
make donations to like the Nashville Humane Society and also to St. Jude. So even though I'm a bad guy in the ring, I still try to do some charity work here and there. So if you want to check that out, it's all in the link tree. And then some of the things we covered today, even like just the ins and outs of wrestling or the psychology or being a heel. I'm actually doing a new segment on my podcast called I Know You Hear Me, where every other Wednesday, 1 week is going to be, interviews with scare actors from haunted houses that I've worked with or that I'm familiar with. And then the next week is going to be something called the Flynn Hendrix experience, where I delve into, real life experiences. What my 2022 was like is going to be the first episode, but the second episode is going to be about being a heel in the wrestling business. And then
Mhm.
the one after that's going to be about being a babyface. So like I'm going to get into a lot of things, and I'm open to topic suggestions too. So if anybody wants to, chime in on that, just subscribe, rate, review, and share, and let's get connected because I want to put out the content that you want to hear. And,
Yeah.
if you're into anime or anything like Looney Tunes, things like that, I've got a lot of big actors and guests are coming on as guests for the I Know You Hear Me podcast on the main feed, like Bob Bergen, who's the voice of Porky Pig. I've got
Oh, wow.
Larry Hankin, who was in Breaking Bad, Friends, Home Alone. Like you've seen him in all these things, but he's always been kind of like the background character. Now he's getting his chance to chat about it. Like there's a lot of big things that are coming on my podcast. So get subscribed so you don't miss an episode because it drops every Friday, and then every Wednesday in the new year is going to be some just different content to keep the feed going and give you something new to listen to as well.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out for sure. All the above there. It all sounds
Sweet.
like really good things you're doing. The Humane Society hits home for me. I
Same.
know on your Instagram, I know not to bring up a sore subject, but I see you lost a dog recently, and
Yeah.
I know how tough that is. I've
Yeah.
lost a few over the years, and it's one of the worst feelings in the
It's
world.
this year has honestly been the roughest because we're coming up on the 1 year anniversary of
Mhm.
losing our first dog this year. We lost him a little bit after New Year last year to cancer. Then 2 months later, we lost his older brother
Mm.
on Mo, the first dog that passed away his birthday. He had a tumor on his spine that couldn't be removed, so we had to, make that call. And then, unfortunately, our third dog that we got, after the fact, attacked our youngest child. So he, unfortunately, had to be put to sleep, and I hated every second of that. And it just,
Mhm.
but he came from the Humane Society. They rescued him from a bad situation, and I will do anything in my power to help, them keep getting these puppies and these dogs and cats out of these situations and helping them find good homes because they can't speak for themselves. So we have to be the ones that help them, and they deserve that kind of love too. So any
Yeah.
way I can help, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's much appreciated. I love animals. I love dogs. I have two.
Yep.
You might have heard it barking a little while ago.
Oh, I did.
I tried to mute it, but it's he
Hey,
knows
the
it's his
dogs
house.
barking. I got the kids running through, so it's all good.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
somewhere I think my cats are begging for food too. But
yeah,
at this point, I've got two cats that beg for food more than the dogs ever did. So
yeah. I know Scott lost one of his dogs to cancer a couple of years ago too.
And it's a rough thing too, because it's like, especially if the vets can't determine it, and you don't know what to do, so you just keep racking up the medical bills, and you want to do everything you can for them because they're like your kids.
Yeah, for sure. They definitely are. Yeah.
Yep.
And you're into Star Wars too.
Oh yeah, like you can see.
I see.
It's not glamorous, but this is my voiceover booth right here, and
nice.
I've got it surrounded with like the Star Wars Celebration from 2019 exclusive curtain. Then I've got some others around the side too, like Star Wars, wrestling, Dragon Ball. I'm surrounded by it.
Yeah, like you were saying, like Star Wars for me, horror. Like you were saying about your horror podcast episodes coming up and all that. Me and Scott are both into horror really big, so
nice.
We'll definitely be listening to those
for sure. And there's we went back and actually re-released. We had it on a separate feed at one point, but we went back and re-released the first season on the I Know You Hear Me feed, so it's all in there too. It's called Tales from the Haunt, and it's just like talking with different scare actors or people that run haunted houses about how they got in, what kind of advice they would give people getting in, some of their scariest experiences. Just it's a lot of cool stuff that gives a different, unique look to like the horror world and what goes into actually being a scare actor too, because it's a lot of things people don't think about. And truth be told, half these people that are scare actors now never wanted to be one or were too scared to be one. So it's cool to see where it turns out on it.
Yeah, definitely. Like we met the cast of Terrifier too at a Monster Mania Con last month or month before. And
that's awesome.
The people in that movie, we met Art the Clown, we met the young lady in it, and then the boy, and I forget their names off the top of my head. He's better with names than I am. And they were so genuine of people. Like I can't even say enough. Like they were just appreciative that all these people came to get their autographs.
Of course.
It was so awesome to see that side of an actor. Like sometimes you do run into people who are like, they sign and
right.
But these guys were definitely not like that, and it was awesome to see that. So
it was
fun.
I mean, that's something too. Like I'm not a big name actor or wrestler or anything like that, but these conventions that I've been at, I try to go out of my way to give these people good experiences, or if their kids want to take a picture with one of my titles or something, I will make it as fun of an experience as possible, because I've been on the receiving end of those negative ones, and I've been that nervous fan that's afraid to talk to somebody, and I don't want somebody to feel that. I want somebody to feel like they had a great experience, and it's something that might inspire them to go and do for somebody else. I want to give back in that way.
Definitely. Well, I think we're going to wind this up, but we would definitely like to have you back on. We would love to have you back on, actually, at some point. We'll talk. We'll keep in contact on Instagram or whatever.
For sure.
It's been a pleasure having you.
It's been my pleasure, man. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, everybody in the chat, for joining us. Thanks for watching. Hit like, subscribe, and share. Also, follow this man, Flynn Hendrix, on all his social medias. Great dude. Great talking to you, my friend. And we'll
talking to you too.
We'll chat soon.
Absolutely.
Thanks for watching,
you guys. Of course, and you guys heard what he said. Like, subscribe, and share for him. Like, subscribe, and share for me. And I know you hear me.
There you go. And we're out. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in 2 weeks at 7 p.m. Eastern. See you later.
Take care, everybody. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Mm-hmm.